The crash shook the windows of my remote homestead like a giant's fist. I dropped the skillet I was holding, grease splattering across the stone floor as a thunderous roar tore across the night sky. By the time I reached my porch, a streak of fire was carving itself into the peat bog half a mile down the valley. On Xylos, you learn quickly not to go toward danger. The frontier is unforgiving, and curiosity usually ends with something eating you. But something about that crash, the way it tumbled end over end, the desperate, spiraling trajectory felt different. Felt alive. I grabbed my rifle, my medkit, and a thermal lantern, then mounted my old rover. The journey across the uneven terrain took 15 minutes that felt like hours. The crash site glowed orange against the purple Xylosian sky, wreckage scattered across the bog like discarded toys. The craft was small, a personal transport, not military. Its hull bore the elegant markings of the Veridian Matriarchy, a star nation I knew only from trader gossip and wanted posters. Then I heard it. A sound so small and fragile it didn't belong in the middle of a wreckage. Crying. I approached carefully, rifle raised, but lowered it when I saw the source. Trapped beneath a collapsed section of the cockpit, curled into a protective ball, was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 12 in Earth years, though with Veridians, age is hard to tell. His skin held the faintest shimmer of green, like morning light through leaves. His eyes, wide with terror and pain, were the color of molten gold. "Hey," I said softly, kneeling. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help." He flinched, speaking in a language that sounded like wind chimes and running water. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the fear. I pointed to myself. "Eli. I'm Eli." Then I pointed to him, raising an eyebrow. He hesitated, then touched his chest. "Theron. Theron," I repeated, nodding. "Okay, Theron, let's get you out of there." It took an hour to free him. His left leg was badly broken, and he had deep cuts along his arms where the hull had shattered. I carried him to my rover, his slight weight nothing compared to the gravity of what I was doing. Taking in an alien child, especially a Veridian child, wasn't just risky. On the frontier, it could be a death sentence. But leaving him wasn't an option. The first week was the hardest. Theron spoke no English, and my Veridian consisted of 3 phrases. Hello, thank you, and please don't kill me. We communicated through gestures, drawings in the dirt, and the universal language of shared meals. He refused meat entirely, something about Veridian physiology I'd later learn, so I cooked extra eggs and foraged for the edible roots that grew near my water supply. His leg healed slowly, wrapped in bandages I changed twice daily. He'd wince but never cry, watching me with those golden eyes that seemed to miss nothing. At night, he'd have nightmares, crying out in his own language. I'd sit by his cot and hum old earth lullabies my mother used to sing, and eventually, he'd settle. By week 2, he'd learned basic English. By week 3, we were having conversations. The matriarchy, he told me one evening, poking at the fire I'd built outside. My mother is important there. Important how? I asked, handing him a cup of herbal tea. He was quiet for a long moment. She is the queen. I nearly choked on my tea. The queen of the entire Veridian Matriarchy. Theron nodded solemnly. I was not supposed to leave the palace, but I wanted to see the stars. Really see them, not through windows. I took a shuttle. I just wanted one night. His voice cracked. Something went wrong. The controls stopped working. I tried to call for help, but I was too far. I thought I was going to die in the dark. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. You didn't. You're here. He looked at me then, his golden eyes glistening. Why did you help me? Humans and Veridians are not friendly. The traders say your people would sell me for parts. The traders are idiots, I said flatly. You're a kid. A scared, hurt kid. That's all I saw. Something shifted in his expression. Trust, maybe. Or hope. Over the following weeks, Theron became part of my strange little life. He helped with the livestock, surprisingly good with the 6-legged golem beasts that provided my milk and wool. He learned to cook simple meals, though he never quite mastered the timing of bread. He asked endless questions about Earth, about humans, about why I lived alone on a frontier planet instead of in the glittering cities I described. I told him the truth. I'd come to Xylos to escape. Escape a failed marriage, escape a life that felt suffocating, escape the version of myself I didn't want to be anymore. Out here, I could just be. No expectations. No disappointments. You are not disappointing, Theron said firmly. You're my friend. The best friend I have ever had. I had to look away, blinking hard. The climax. The Veridian Warships arrived on the 43rd day. I woke to a sky filled with light, the atmosphere itself seeming to hum with power. Ships the size of small cities hung in low orbit, their hulls gleaming like polished jade. Smaller craft were already descending, heading straight for my homestead. Theron stood beside me on the porch, his face unreadable. They found me. I know, kid. I put a hand on his shoulder. It's okay. This is what we wanted, right? For you to go home. He didn't answer. The landing party was led by a Veridian woman who could only be the queen. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible, her silver-green robes flowing like liquid, her golden eyes, so like Theron's, sweeping across my humble home with an expression I couldn't decipher. Behind her, a dozen warriors in ornate armor carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Theron ran to her before anyone could speak, throwing himself into her arms. The queen held him like she'd never let go, her composed facade cracking just enough to reveal the terrified mother beneath. They spoke rapidly in their chiming language, and I caught my name several times. Then the queen turned to me. Eli of Earth. Her voice was music and command intertwined. You have my eternal gratitude. My son tells me you saved his life, that you healed him, protected him, cared for him when you had every reason to turn away. I shrugged, suddenly feeling very small and very human. He's a good kid. Anyone would have done the same. No, the queen said softly. They would not. Many would have seen profit. Others would have seen threat. You saw only a child in need. That is rare. That is precious. She gestured, and one of her attendants stepped forward carrying a small, ornate chest. The queen opened it, and I literally could not breathe. Inside lay gems the size of my fist, each one pulsing with an inner light. Crystals I'd only ever seen in museums, worth more than most planets. Data tablets containing, she explained, deeds to property on 3 different worlds, including a fully operational mining colony. And resting on top, a single circlet of silver so pure it seemed to glow. This is the reward of kinship, the queen said, lifting the circlet. It has not been given in 500 years. It grants you the status of royal kin within the Veridian Matriarchy. You may travel our worlds freely. You may call upon our aid. You are, from this moment forward, family. I stared at her, then at Theron, who was beaming through his tears. Your Majesty, I don't know what to say. This is too much. You just saved my son, she interrupted gently. There is no too much for that. The ending. They left at dawn the next day. Theron hugged me for a long, long time, his thin arms surprisingly strong. I will come back, he whispered. I promise. When I am older, when I can choose, I will come back to visit my friend. You'd better, I said, my voice rough. And bring pictures. I want to see this palace of yours. He laughed, then pulled away, wiping his eyes. The queen approached me one last time. There is one more thing, she said quietly. The reward of kinship includes something not listed in the chest. She reached out and touched my chest, right over my heart. You will live longer now. Not forever. Nothing lives forever. But longer. The kinship bond shares life between those connected. Theron wanted you to have his years. I have approved it. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. We Veridians measure wealth in moments, the queen continued. In connections. In love. You gave my son the most precious thing in the universe. You gave him yourself. We merely return the gift. She stepped back, and then they were gone, rising into the sky on columns of light, swallowed by the waiting ships above. I stood on my porch for a long time after they left, watching the empty sky. Then I went inside, made tea, and sat in the chair by the fire where Theron used to sit. I touched my chest, where the queen had placed her hand. I couldn't feel any different, but somehow I knew I was. Months passed. The chest of gems funded improvements to my homestead, a proper roof, actual heating, enough supplies to last through the worst winters. The mining colony ran itself, its profits trickling in regularly. I wanted for nothing materially. But the best gift came on a quiet evening, 1 year to the day after the warships left. A small shuttle landed near my home, its hull gleaming with Veridian markings. The door opened, and a young man stepped out, taller now, his shoulders broader, but those golden eyes unchanged. Theron grinned at me from across the field. I told you I'd come back. I walked toward him, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel like I was escaping. I felt like I was home. Welcome back, kid, I said, pulling him into a hug. Welcome home. The queen's reward hadn't been gems or land or even extended life. It had been this, the knowledge that out there, across the vast, cold darkness of space, someone was coming back. Someone remembered. Someone called me family. And that, more than anything, left me breathless.